Wake up, Phil. It's time for you to crush a league with a bunch of questionable cards in a Blood Moon shell. Hello, folks. Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU, here for another Legacy video. Just generically, I want to say thank you before I get going here. I've gotten a lot of kind words of support and a decent number of donation deck lists since I kind of started the content going again after the hurricane. So thanks, folks. I feel quite loved. Today's deck list comes to us from Anubis, who has some spice for us. And we need to figure out what is spicy and what is actually good from Duskmourn. We have already given Pyrogoyf from Modern Horizons 3 Commander, I think, the official ThrabenU seal of approval, honorary degree for sure. This card absolutely slaps. And now we're going to try out two others today, starting with Razorkin Needlehead, which the art for this is super baller. It has first strike during your turn, but that's not why we're playing it. Whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to them. So this is your Orcish Bowmaster in mono red without you needing to splash a color, as we've seen somewhat recently trying to do something like be an Ancient Tomb deck while splashing black for something like Bowmasters ends up putting a lot of strain on the mana base. And notably, this is any card whenever your opponent draws a card. That does include the one from their draw step. And so if you start thinking okay, draw step plus ponder, brainstorm, whatever, that can actually be a relatively substantial amount of damage. The primary thing that this is going to have going against it in Legacy is that Ancient Tomb and City of Traders don't provide the double red pips that you need to cast something like this. And there's one other neat card here, Screaming Nemesis. This is a 3/3 with haste. Whenever it is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. So, red players, let me ask you, how many times have you been doing a noble job of reducing your opponent's life total, and then they're just like, haha, Triumph of St. Catherine, haha, No. No life gain for you. Screaming Nemesis coming down maybe on turn 1 as a 3/3 with haste is relatively strong, and Razorkin, Needlehead, and Screaming Nemesis can kind of combo. Wait, no, it's 1 damage to them, not to any target. JK, ignore that part. So your opponent is either taking 3 from this, or maybe blocking it or lightning bolting it to remove it, and if they deal damage to it, too bad for you. We have ways of dealing damage to our own creatures. We do. So we could, in theory, Shatter Skull Smashing or maybe dead our own Screaming Nemesis in order to force our opponent to not be able to gain life. And we can probably set up some pretty interesting things where we copy that with Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, go in with a couple of things, put our opponents into very bad blocking situations. Notice here in this build that we are still not on Chalice of the Void. In this current metagame, it is so important to be playing a pile of blasts for Psychic Frog, Tameo, something like an Atraxa that sneaks its way into play. This sideboard is very, very geared towards fighting against the fair stuff of the metagame, which I think is reasonable. If we find ourselves playing against a non-blue, non-graveyard deck, our options for sideboarding might be very limited, but hopefully it just works out. Folks, MagicCon Vegas is approaching. Should you need some cards for Vegas, please consider checking out my sponsor, TOAMagic.com. Tales of Adventure is an awesome store. I tend to buy a lot of things when I am on site at large events, and they're an awesome vendor. Look for this purple color. Their booth should be pretty easy to spot. If you're going to order online in advance, promo code ThrabenU will save you 5% on your order, and you can pick up your cards on site and skip the line. Let's battle. Okay, at first glance, you might think that this hand is a keep, because it can produce a turn 1 Trinisphere. But one of the things that I say again and again and again on this channel is that a lock piece with no follow-up is not a keep. And if you look further at this hand, you play your lock piece on turn 1, and then you are playing a 5-card hand that can't produce double red, and that's not really going anywhere. So we're going to mulligan this one. We unfortunately have no red mana this time. We'll be going to 5. The 5-card hand is reasonable. Keep land, keep Magus of the Moon, keep Spirit Guide, and we try to just slam a turn 1 Magus of the Moon and hope that it wins us this game. Alright, why are you so small? Get a little bigger, bud. There we go. I'd love to draw a red card. That'll do. That'll do. So, Ancient Tomb, Chromox, now we can imprint Spirit Guide, take 2, play Magus of the Moon. Our opponent probably has 2 basics in their deck, and once I draw another land, Shatterskull Smashing for X equals 2 answers It That Heralds the End. We're probably winning this game. It's not, explicitly over here or anything, but this is very good. Fuck yeah. Tutor. So on my own turn, this has first strike. I am now going to win the damage race versus It That Heralds the End, and my opponent is taking 1 damage per draw step from Razorkin. Ooh. Damn it. That's annoying. That's colorless mana. So, I believe that I trade here, and we're going to end up doing something a little questionable with my turn. Shatterskull Smashing. 1 target. We are killing that spawn. I am not giving my opponent colorless mana. We are going to take 3 here and hope that our opponent does not have Sowing Mycospawn to fetch basic wastes. Because I can probably outpace my opponent if all they have is this Eldrazi Repurposer. That should not be hard, but Sowing Mycospawn does me in. Fuck you! No! No! We wiggled so well this game. We wiggled so well this game. That is realistically probably the end, though. This was ultimately super unfortunate for us. Don't think I double block that. Down to 10. Get a redraw here. Alright. Thank you, Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble. Bruh. We gotta talk. I am fine conceding here. We are going to lose the beatdown at this point. That was unfortunate. Our opponent has 2 basics in their deck, and they got access to both of them. Our Vexing Baubles here are not particularly strong. I am probably going to board those out for a couple copies of Dead Gone. I could unlicensed Hearse. It's not exciting. I could keep 2 Vexing Baubles. Sometimes I would play those. It's not crazy to just play 2 Pyroblasts or Red Elemental Blasts to put cards under Chromox. If I had Furies in this build, that might be more attractive. Ooh, we also have Trinispheres, though. That probably means that I have to keep these. Play these. I don't love how the sideboarding feels versus Eldrazi, and that's a popular deck. This is turn 2 Blood Moon. That's fine. So the Vexing Bauble does technically have some text. Some amount of the time these decks are playing a Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox sort of situation, so it's not like they do literally nothing. We will just start out mooning immediately. This one is not going to get dismembered. That's my opponent just literally drawing a card with that, just cycling it before they lose access to their mana. That's a mountain. This is also a mountain. Let's just get in there with our 3/3 haster. The haste damage is nice. This is different than a Goblin Rabble Master effect, right? Oh yeah, opponent is just on discarding here. That is fantastic. I'm hitting in for 3. Then it's a little harder. I think I'm going to hold Pyrogoyf in hand and play Magus of the Moon. I want that redundancy for my Blood Moon effect. 3rd land drop. Still no actions. So I'm going to hit in for 5 here. Bring my opponent to 9. I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I also have Pyrogoyf. Alright. We'll play this in pass. I'm going to leave Vexing Bauble in play. King my opponent. Okay, easy W. And maybe the main deck, 8 moon effects is enough to make the Eldrazi matchup reasonable. Like, our opponent was pretty lucky to have either basic forest or basic waste. Ooh. Am I favored to win the game if I play turn 1 Blood Moon, but am then on 1 mana? Am I roughly 50% mana with this build? 28, roughly. Given how that game went, and given that we know the matchup, I think I'm okay keeping this. Our opponent could play a turn 1 2/2. Ooh, I like that a lot. Although, honestly, here, I think I saved the Spirit Guide and don't imprint that because I'm about to go down a mana. I get rid of one of these two. Probably Screaming Nemesis. Fable helps stabilize my mana. So let's just play the turn 1 Blood Moon here. Yeah, you can Once Upon a Time in response. That lets you dig for a basic Eldrazi Repurposer. Alright, so do you have your 1 forest? Not yet, at least. I think I really like playing Fable this turn. Fable does something a little subtle here, in that I can loot away cards to grow Pyrogoyf. Dismember. Well, that's fine. No basic forest. Opponent is not playing Magic currently. Ooh. My Pyrogoyf is a good card in the matchup, but it is currently not good. I think I'm going to loot away Pyrogoyf and Mountain here to grow future Pyrogoyfs. Let's get redundancy in here. And I think I am going to want you as a land. I could hold it for a turn, but I think I'm going to want that as a land because I want mana to activate this while still playing 3-drops. All right. Blood Moon's confirmed good. This one I'll hold. Screaming Nemesis. In for 5. Down to 11. Opponent is probably taking 8 next turn and is dead the following turn. All right. GG. Easy. Not even that game 1 swing around could get us. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com. It's just the best place to keep your online deck lists, and it's also a great tool if you're a competitive tournament player. What I'm showcasing here is its compare feature. You can take 2 deck lists, plug in links to both of them, and then see which cards are unique to deck list A, which cards are unique to deck list B, and which cards are shared with both of them. And you can do this both with the main deck and the sideboard. If you are looking to fine-tune a deck list, this is a great way to do that. Okay. This is a hand that could win the game on turn 1 if Magus of the Moon resolves and is relevant, or it is a hand that, like, I can resolve Magus of the Moon and then my opponent just plays a basic island and I'm fucked. I think we can do better than this on average on a 6 or 5. Yeah, this is fine. I'll put back 1 Spirit Guide, I guess. This hand really requires my opponent, like, fetching and pondering, putting some stuff in graveyard to kind of be optimal. And this is a hand where my opponent doing something like Prismatic ending on my Chrome Mox would be pretty devastating. Force of Will, pitching Brazen Borrower. Alright, so Pyrogoyf already a reasonable size. Yeah, so my opponent had a basic island in hand, so if I keep the first one and lead on Magus of the Moon, my opponent just still plays Magic. And that's why you don't keep lock piece only hands. Multiple Pyrogoyfs. So these are really good in multiples because whenever Pyrogoyf or another Lurgoyf enters, it triggers. So we are perfectly fine just playing this here and going face. This is worth a lightning bolt worth of damage to face immediately, plus a lightning bolt on an attack afterwards. We might be able to get our opponent out of range of reanimate before they can reanimate something like and Atraxa is what I was going to say. Okay, so this turn's cool. So I get to play Vexing Bauble, and then I have 4 mana, so I can play Pyrogoyf. It's going to resolve. Pyrogoyf triggers twice, pointing 6 damage at our opponent's face, bringing them to 10. If I had 1 more mana, I could crack the Vexing Bauble. as well. Opponent is at 9, which is, wait, what is that, 7? I can't math, apparently. Yeah, so 7 means that Reanimate on Atraxa is no longer live. Psychic Frog is that fine? That's probably fine. I'm gonna Magus of the Moon here. Shut off my opponent's black. I can attack in with 2 4/5 Pyrogoyfs if I sacrifice Vexing Bauble. And my opponent would have to yeet their entire hand to trade with a Pyrogoyf. I think I am okay with that. I think this is one of those times where I am in an advantageous enough position that I can actually attempt to force my opponent's hand on the Psychic Frog. So you can start discarding cards. All right, there is a Reanimate we successfully stopped. There is a Daze that we don't care about. I'm going to let my opponent discard the next card here. Oh, yeah, there's Archon. So now I crack Vexing Bauble, make these bigger. My opponent can decide if they want to bounce or if they want to discard whatever that final card is. Here you are flying. Oh, shit! I forgot about that. Good play. I still don't think it will be too difficult to force lethal, because I don't think my opponent can ever really attack with this Psychic Frog, and I only need to find 2 more damage, which I already do have. Daze, I suppose, is online here, since I cracked Vexing Bauble, but it doesn't come up. Ooh, wow. You can have your card. What does that mean? Tameo as a blocker? No. Opponent would need 2 things here. Or maybe this is just desperation. They have to draw to try to find something because I can attack them with 3 bodies and always have lethal. All right. So basically everything other than Pithing Needle is probably reasonable. And I just decide how I'm going to approach this game. I probably don't care about Trinisphere. I probably don't care about Blood Moon. I think this game is much more about, like, just answer the cards that they play rather than trying to lock them out. Like, I might board in, like, 12 cards here. Yeah, I don't even know that I want a Magus. This is Blasts, plus Hearse, plus Fairy, and then I play, like, 1 Magus or 1 Dead Gone. Let's do 1 Dead Gone. Does this leave me with enough win conditions? 19 creatures plus Fables. Well, I mean, you're technically creatures. But yeah, this is like all these blasts plus Pyrogoyfs. I have 5 cards covering the graveyard, 1 answer to a troll or something that sneaks in play. This seems fine. I think that's fine. This is not a typical hand. I think it's fine. It definitely hedges in certain directions, though. I will say that. Cool. I believe I just play a tapped land on turn 1. I don't believe that I take 3 to hold up Red Elemental Blast. I think I'm okay casting a Red Elemental Blast on my own turn around Daze. That's a shuffle. We're going to play blah, blah. We're going to play that. Tapped is fine. An opponent can cantrip. So my opponent on turn 2 has access to both of their basics if they want them. Boo. Boo. Opponent can actually take my land drop here. I think Land Drop and Fairy are the best cards in my hand, and it's not close. Yep. Ancient Tomb off the top, baby. Fuck. Raw Step? Metamorphosis Fanatic? Question mark? Yep, results. Good sideboard card is good. F. I don't think I want to discard the enchantment to grow the opposing Goyf. I think I am very far away from this card mattering. But it's not like this one matters either. I'm going to keep the Pyrogoyf. It eventually might do something. But I think we just get Thought Seized out of this one. My opponent just gaining a bunch of life is also not great here. They're picking up Brazen Borrower. I've got Blasts for the blue stuff. Since I have 3 of these and limited ability to use my mana, I am fine trading 1 for 1 here. Sure. And then we get the Surveil. Consign to memory. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm going to take that out. Let's take out Troll. And I'm going to take out my own creature from my graveyard as well. Ugh. think I'm okay conceding this one and moving to the next one. Okay, so after seeing Pyrogoyf, you might think, do I want the extra copy of this? I think the answer is no. I have already gone down a decent number of creatures. I've gone down 4 creatures already, and I would be taking out another creature to play this card. And the Pyrogoyf looked particularly good there, as I had no power on board of any fashion. This is fine. We are going to, on average, play a more controlling game in these post-sideboard games, so the opening hands are going to look very different. All right. I'm now going to do something that looks a little weird. I'm going to take 2 to play Unlicensed Hearse, so that I can play around Consigned to Memory on this card by holding up Pyroblast. Ooh, man. Actually happening? I think it's actually happening. I'm so smart and handsome. Boop. Fantastic. So now my opponent's graveyard is in check. Their counterspells are in check. Now everything's not perfect, but this is a very good start. I'm probably taking 2 from my Ancient Tomb next turn, and then after that, I probably don't tap Ancient Tomb again this game. Now the Unlicensed First does work against our own Pyrogoyfs, so that's just something to kind of keep in mind. There's a fetch land. Opponent getting Underground Sea this time. And a Ponder. Ponder shuffles, usually a good sign. We will start eating things out of graveyard. And I think I am interested in taking 2 this turn, so that I don't need to play out and potentially lose City of Traders. All right, so we've got some lock pieces. We have a clock. My opponent is just going to put a 4/4 lifelinker in play, which is annoying. No friends in graveyard, though. Sure. We'll keep chipping away at the old graveyard. I'd like to draw another threat. Fantastic. Whenever this is dealt, damage deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. Try to swing in. I hope my opponent blocks. Makes my turn better. My Pyrogoyf is a touch awkward currently. I can get it to kill Metamorphosis Fanatic next turn a decent portion of the time, assuming that I crack my own Vexing Bauble. Oh, that helps too. You can have your swamp. So now I can play Pyrogoyf on my turn. You can wasteland me, that's fine. Play Pyrogoyf on my turn after it resolves crack Vexing Bauble, and then kill Metamorphosis Fanatic with it. All right, I'll take 4. I have a land in my graveyard still, so I can eat your lands. So cast Pyrogoyf. Target this. In response, crack Vexing Bauble. This now does 4. Fantastic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 damage that I could do, but I don't want to tap the Hearse. Tapping the Hearse is just too scary with Troll and Metamorphosis Fanatic in graveyard. So we won't do that. Yeah, I mean, I am going to exile the 2 cards from your graveyard. Land drop. Sure. Opponent could just reanimate a Troll now. Sure. That happens. Do I even care? 5. So when this is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. I could just attack with this and deal my opponent either 3 or 5 damage. That seems perfectly fine. So let's go. Yeah. Bauble. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 plus 3, 11. If I attack with this, my opponent basically needs to block this creature or die. I think it is okay to accordingly pivot to the beatdown. Send him in. Blocking the Pyrogoyf. Going to 2. And let's hope that that is good enough. The Screaming Nemesis is very strong here. It's possible that this was too risky of a line on my end. Ooh, sure. You would like to deal damage to my Screaming Nemesis, I see. I would like to deal damage to you. Yeah. Anyway, that's why you play weird cards that people have not played against. You do get that brewer's advantage. All right, I am on the play. I've kept my opening hand. We would really prefer to do something on turn 1 with this deck, but I don't think I get to throw back the hand that just has 3 reasonable plays. I am counting this as a reasonable play because I am expecting to have red from one of the 2 Blood Moon effects. So we'll just make our land drop and pass the turn. The moon effects are better the earlier in the game that you play them. Ah, shit. Oh, that's fine. We still probably win through that. My opponent can't take both of the moon effects. Blood Moon down. Opponent is probably playing Oops All Spells. It is possible that this is just being played as a value land. Trinisphere is probably better than a moon effect, though. So let's start there. Then we'll end up following that up with Magus. And I think at that point, it is just fully GG. Okay. Spirit Guide. Undercity Informer. Sure, that's actually a little bit scary. It is possible to lose from here. Magus cuts them off black mana, but the Chrome Mox Lotus Petal stuff could still be played out. Yeah, I think I like the Trinisphere more than the Magus, even though this did allow my opponent to put Undercity Informer in play. That's not exactly what I want to be drawing here. I am going to go ahead and play Magus of the Moon. That still has plenty of relevant text on it. It does interestingly allow our opponent to shock in lands, in air quotes there, without paying 3 life. My opponent needs to end up with 4 mana to sacrifice Undercity Informer to itself and then cast Dread Return from graveyard. And my opponent has apologized for crappy internet. So they are not sitting here thinking they've got a poor connection right now. Okay. So they need another land drop, and I need to kill them. I can keep making land drops. I can't attack reasonably here. I can't double spell due to my own Trinisphere, so we're just passing turn. I get to deal chip damage to my opponent with their draw steps. Okay, cool. No artifact mana played out this turn. That's good. Ooh, yeah. That's pretty much the perfect draw. We're going to deal 3 damage to that for our 5 mana, and then swing in for the 4 damage. Opponent does not have green mana currently, so they can't do any cool things with, like, Memory's Journey here. This draw step brings them to 6, and then they're dead next turn. I attack them for 4, and then the Razorkin Needlehead triggers will put them to 0. There we go. 2 after first strike. All right. The Razorkin Needleheads have officially won a game. I mean, like, unless you want to point to the lock pieces as being the things that actually win the game. All right, what are we doing? Graveyard Hate, good. Pithing Needle, playable. Dead Gone's Pyroblasts, Red Elemental Blasts, kind of whatever. Most of the time, my opponent is not actually casting the Thassa's Oracle. They're reanimating it from graveyards. And most of the time, they're going to have 0 cards in library. So conceptually, how am I winning? Like, what is making opening hands keepable from my main deck? These 16 cards. I probably don't cut Pyrogoyfs, even though they're really slow, because they can kill out Undercity Informers that are played out, like in the scenario that we were just looking at. This just won me a game, but it does get walled by a 2/3, so that probably goes. That gets me the start of this stuff. Is it Screaming Nemesis? Probably. This is fine. Note that the game where I am on the draw is really tough, as Fairy is my only turn 1 piece of interaction, and sometimes that's not good enough. Vexing Bauble is really good. I am going to keep this and hope that I don't die on turn 1. If my opponent just opens on Thoughtseize, I have 2 Vexing Baubles here, so I can't lose both of them. And countering free Dread Return, pretty good as far as a strategy goes. But we do just lose to our opponent making a turn 1 attempt. Opponent going to 4. Land, Dark Ritual, Lotus Petal, go. Alright, let's see if we're dead. Land pass. That is not going to do it. So, let's counter all free spells. Ooh, apparently let's not. That's okay. That means it's pretty hard for me to just die next turn. I think impossible. Cool. Yeah? Yeah. Imprint a Magus of the Moon. 3-ball? Magus? Vexing Bauble? Hearse? I have a wealth of riches here. I think I like Trinisphere first. I think I like Trinisphere into Vexing Bauble. Tapped land. Sure. So, I don't get to play 2 spells this turn. Actually, what about Magus? I like Magus. Very hard for my opponent to cast colored spells. And the black mana matters. The Trinisphere also matters. I think I can click on my cards in any order and win this game, though. If I am being perfectly honest. 17. Let's get Vexing Bauble down. Now, Magus of the Moon plus Vexing Bauble means that no artifact mana, no colored mana from lands. It has to be like Spirit Guide type stuff at this point, and I don't know how you win from there. All right, my opponent's on 6. I am on the play. I have Vexing Bauble into uncounterable Magus of the Moon, which is potentially powerful depending on what exactly my opponent is playing and what land they fetch on turn 1. This is an Underground Sea deck. Okay, that's a mana dork, so Magus doesn't fully shut off their mana production, but is still probably pretty good. This is going to shut off Gaia's Cradles and the Ilk for this game. Okay, sure. One has realized that everything is a mountain. Oh man, Shatterskull Smashing as a draw would be sweet. Probably want Fable to loot through these 2, maybe this. So let's get in there with our Magus. Unfortunately, my opponent can just, natural order. Sure. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just Green Sun. Just Green Sun. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. I'm going to get to kill that Grist. My opponent can Wasteland me, which I don't actually know if they should do, because I am already, pretty damn stable in terms of mana. I am interested in looting. I never want Ancient Tomb. I don't think I need Spirit Guide. I'll play the Needlehead if I draw nothing else. Screaming Nemesis. Is that better than another Fable? No. Another Fable lets me loot towards removal for this, a new Blood Moon effect. I think that's just too good to not do. I played my turn wrong, though. I should have cracked Vexing Bauble off my treasure token to see if I draw a Moon effect or a Shatterskull Smashing. That was a really bad mistake. That was a really, really bad mistake. New Green Sun or a 4/4 Knight. Sure. So I'm going to use this ability. I think I'm going to keep Screaming Nemesis and get rid of the 2 Razorkins. Maybe that's not true. Maybe I keep one of these. It's just consistent damage. This is interesting versus Knights. I can make copies of it, though. Yeah. Okay. Let's crack Vexing Bauble, take a redraw. Shatterskull Smashing. I can kill that post-combat, assuming my opponent blocks. Can I also play Screaming Nemesis? Assuming my opponent blocks a 2/2, I will have 3 mana post-combat. No, 4 mana post-combat. There's another treasure there. So yes, I can kill that post-combat. Oh yeah. Combat. Send in. Make my treasures. Opponent blocks a 2/2. Takes 5. Then I need to do this for X equals 2 to kill it. Will cost me all my treasures, but it's not like they are doing anything right now. Get out. Now, Screaming Nemesis Reflection of Kiki Jiki is actually pretty cool from here. The Green Sun for 2, holding back a blocker. What does 2 get them that matters? Sure. Moon is cool. Blood Moon, Dryad Arbor, it's still a 1/1, I believe. Let's make a copy of Screaming Nemesis here. I would be totally fine trading Goblin Shaman for Collector Oof and dealing 6 damage to my opponent. I'm also fine if my opponent trades with Screaming Nemesis and takes 8. Ooh. My opponent took all of that, probably meaning that they care about a Gaia's Cradle for mana. So let's just nope the fuck out of that. And pass, getting rid of our Screaming Nemesis token. Outland Liberator. Sure. They can get rid of Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. Then they're not getting rid of Blood Moon. Also, I just have 2 fucking Reflections of Kiki-Jiki. Okay place to be in the world. Yeah. Okay, I could have played that one a little bit tighter, but we just did the thing. Alright, so what do I want to do against my opponents like Rock Maverick style deck list? Probably don't care about any of this stuff. Probably want these cards. Probably don't care about Trinisphere. Probably don't care about Vexing Bauble. We technically don't have enough cards for the matchup here, so I have to play a couple of Trinispheres or Vexing Baubles to fill. Probably Vexing Baubles, they redraw. So this will be our 60. I have a medium hand. It's actually really bad against Wasteland, and the Magus of the Moon feels slow here. Like, if I get Wastelanded on turn 1, we're pretty close to immediately lose the game. I think I prefer a hand with some fast mana. I can keep a 6 that looks like this super easily. Alright. This is a keep. It hedges a little bit more in a certain direction than I might like, especially after my opponent can fetch a turn 1 basic. But stopping Gaia's Cradles and Wastelands and stuff is still very relevant, and my opponent does require multiple colored spells. So for example, I can cut... Oh wow, they intentionally chose not to get a basic land. Wild. Alright. Imprint you. They might have the basic in hand. This is answerable by Outland Liberator. This could be answered by something like a Dismember. My opponent has 4 green suns at tutor for Outland Liberator. I think I like Magus accordingly. I am still going to need a little bit more mana to keep things going. Alright. Sure. Oh, that's it? Land. Land, 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 land. Fuck yeah. Never didn't have it. Pyrogoyf? I can Blood Moon. I can Pyrogoyf into Blood Moon, but I can't Blood Moon into Pyrogoyf guaranteed. I think I'm just going to Moon and not give my opponent a chance to draw fetch land. I'm not 100% sure about that decision, but I think this is okay. What are you doing with 2 colorless? You're attacking me for 1. That's what you're doing. Pithing Needle. I will play it. I believe that I'm just going to preemptively name Grist. That's something that can kill my threats or my Magus of the Moon that further helps to stabilize the board. Ooh. The green basic land is more threatening than the white. The white opens up removal. We'll just Screaming Nemesis and get the Swords to Plowshares out of my opponent's hand. There we go. Yep. That's another mountain. Opponent is playing a lot of those. It's weird because it doesn't cast their spells. I'm just passing the turn here. More mountains. So many. 16. Let's use this as a spell. Like, I can imprint it, but this grows the Pyrogoyf for if something does end up slipping through. Fable is fine. I can loot away that Chrome Mox. I would really like to find a Magus of the Moon specifically, so that Force of Vigor does not turn my opponent's lands back on. So we are going to loot through mana sources, even if sometimes that causes me not to be able to Pyrogoyf. But I have this, so I probably get to Pyrogoyf. And now I don't think it matters that we could lose the Blood Moon. I think this Pyrogoyf into Pyrogoyf plus copy Pyrogoyf situation that is going to happen is just too much direct damage. So my opponent goes to 9, and then I will deal them 8 directly next turn and 6 in combat. And in theory, the following turn, I deal them like 12 damage. Yeah, opponent is complaining about not drawing Force of Vigor. Send in for 6. You know what? No, we're not going to let them complain about Force of Vigor. Remember when you fetched Bayou on turn 1 instead of Basic Forest? You remember that? Because I remember that. I remember that quite well. You don't... Opponent says, had Decay in hand. Well, fat fucking lot of good the Decay did you in your hand. No. Get your fucking Basic Forest. Okay, I am on the draw here. I have a turn 2 Trinisphere, turn 3 Screaming Nemesis or Pyrogoyf. The hand is just okay. We're playing for a trophy. It's pretty easy for my opponent to go under a Trinisphere here, I think. Ooh, we are probably playing against Death's Shadow. A Blood Moon effect would be pretty strong here. Nice. So we're going to Mountain Pass. The biggest worry is that my opponent just has something like a Psychic Frog pivot plan this turn. I don't care that much about a Thoughtseize. I have two really good plays and kind of a third good play. Alright, opponent goes for my Magus, meaning that I can attempt to resolve Trinisphere and slow their various game plans down. I am okay just jamming Trinisphere as quickly as possible here, even if it just gets dazed or Force of Willed this turn. I think I am still okay with that expenditure of resources. Yep, that's fine. But I don't think I want to give my opponent time here, and an artifact going to graveyard means the Pyrogoyf is fucking huge. If my opponent aggressively lowers their own life total, then some of my cards like Screaming Nemesis and Pyrogoyf can end up being incredibly good at finishing the game afterwards. So we'll go for the Screaming Nemesis around days this turn. Send it. Opponent's at 10. 9 after a fetch. Not going for an Underground Sea. Sorry, Watery Grave. Alright, so they intentionally let themselves get hit. Sure. I'm going to take 3 damage this turn, I think. Yeah, I think I'm taking 3 damage this turn. They ultimately want to play Pyrogoyf around days here. If my opponent doesn't have threats, then having additional copies of soft removal spells like Daze or unusable cards like maybe a Spell Pierce or something like that is reasonable. Oh, hey, there's a Spell Pierce that I just called. Alright, so there's the Wasteland. Ooh, yeah. Yeah. So we're going to try to exhaust our opponent's resources before we ever cast this Pyrogoyf, which will be 4 lethal. The opponent is now at 5. Tapped land. Death's Shadow. Hello, would you like to block my Screaming Nemesis with your Death's Shadow? Would you like to block both copies of Screaming Nemesis with Death's Shadow? Delicious. This is very funny. Force of Will. Pitching Daze. Combat. Attackers. Attack. Go to 1. Pass turn. I don't think there is any card that is going to both answer my Screaming Nemesis and my Pyrogoyf at the exact same time for 1 card. Okay. I don't know exactly what secondary threats my opponent is playing. I did not see many things. I'm just going to assume that Psychic Frog is in their deck because they're in blue. I skimmed some Death Shadow deck lists. Some of them are on like Troll Reanimate stuff and some of them aren't. Probably going to board in some number of these cards. I think I'm going to go Trinispheres out. I think I'm not going to try to Blood Moon cheese a win. We'll see whether or not my opponent has basics. This gets me all of these. I think my plan is just like kill my opponent. This might be a couple too many blasts, but like Murktide Regent's Psychic Frogs like super matter. Reluctant keep. We just kind of see how this goes. I think it gets improved by enough random draws. Like, it gets improved by most non-mana draws pretty heavily. And I think I settle in for a longer game and play around days. And we can kind of see what my opponent is doing in terms of, like, shocking, surveilling, entombing. You can have a Brainstorm. More important to answer a Psychic Frog or Murktide Regent or something. Or potentially just back up my own spell. So, alright, opponent is also just chilling. That's fine. That is a lot of Pyrogoyf. Yeah? I am going to imprint one, despite the fact that these are quite good in multiples. I think it is too important to potentially Pyroblast a Force of Will. This is Spell Pierceable. That's fine, you can have that. If I Pyroblast that, then I open back up the days that I am trying to play around. Alright, Fable in play. And that can allow me to loot away these 2 lands, which I don't really want. I wouldn't mind getting a little bit more mana, but... Ooh? Yes. Pyrogoyf is still only a 2/3 despite this many cards in graveyards. There's only been an instance so far. That is fine. This means I probably loot away City, not anything else. I wouldn't mind drawing a Fable that I can discard. Daze is a thing. Yes, I am going to loot away City. This is the best turn that I will ever have to answer Death Shadow. I think I'm going to get rid of Vexing Bauble and hope that I draw like a Spirit Guide. Then I can Pyrogoyf around Daze. Okay. This Death Shadow probably grows by 3 if I don't answer it this turn. Pyrogoyf currently beats Death Shadow, assuming no Dismember Street Wraith sorts of nonsense. If I play Magus of the Moon with Pyroblast backup, does that beat Death Shadow? Maybe with Pyrogoyf direct damage it does. Maybe. Let's try Magus of the Moon and play towards copying Pyrogoyf for lethal. Okay. But my opponent does not have an island for the purposes of Daze. So Daze is now off. Ooh, yeah. We're going to play this. I believe that pre-combat I cast Pyrogoyf, because if my opponent dismembers Magus of the Moon, I don't want to take 2. But if my opponent dismembers Magus of the Moon, I can Pyrogoyf with Pyroblast backup. Okay. Send it down to 8. Oh, right, but the Pyrogoyf Death Shadow grows. Weird situation. Now I didn't give myself the opportunity to kill the Death Shadow. I think it's fine because I'm intending on killing my opponent, but it's a little weird. And Duskmourn Stompy 5-0s relatively easily. So, at the end of the day, what is goated with the sauce? Is it me, or is it the deck? Legitimately unsure. Screaming Nemesis as a haste creature that still pushes damage through if it is like blocked or bolted is very interesting. It lined up well versus some of the larger threats that my opponents were playing, like Troll of Khazad-dûn, Knight of the Reliquary, Death Shadow in the final round. Screaming Nemesis feels like a real card. Is it better than the Rabble Masters or Legion War bosses or Furies or One Rings that are normally in the deck? I feel like I would need more data to collect, but I'd say this is officially on my radar of cards that potentially belong in this deck. I give this the official, like, I would test with this more. I think this is a very real Magic card. It is worthy of its slot at Mythic. Razorkin Needlehead did win us some games, but did it win us games where another threat would not have? You know, does this win us a game that Goblin Rabble Master does not win us? Maybe not. It's certainly interesting. It doesn't technically get immediate value when it comes down, but assuming that your opponent like untaps and draws and starts their turn, it always deals at least 1 damage. In multiples, this can get kind of silly against cantrips. I sometimes boarded these out in rounds, but that was mostly because I had a giant pile of cards that was just like kind of correct to bring in. It's not like every round was just like, oh, I am always cutting these because they are bad. It was fine. And if your opponent is doing something unfair with card draw, like Echo of Eons, it can actually be quite powerful. So Anubis, I think your build was pretty reasonable. I think all the cards here worked well. Sideboard numbers felt a little weird versus Eldrazi, but if you are just going to win the game by resolving a Magus of the Moon or a Blood Moon some decently high proportion of the time, it's just totally fine. So, thumbs up. Deck overall is good. You need your Duskmourn cards. You know where to go. Promo code ThrabenU to let them know that I sent you. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya.